You know, I think if there's one thing we can all agree on about this episode, it's that it exists. So it starts out with Gibbs on his couch, and then Ziva calls him and is like, did you talk to Phineas? How did it go? You know, they say there's no such thing as stupid questions, but like, Ziva offers to come over and talk to Phineas. I don't know exactly what that would do, unless she was just like, if you think your life is bad, get a load of this. He tells Ziva, no, you should just go back to your family. But then Sloane starts calling, and he immediately hangs up on Ziva because he's not about to miss a booty call over this. Sloane says that she's gonna come over, but then she's already outside, so that's weird. Gibbs goes upstairs to check on Phineas, but it turns out he's run away. While Sloane and Gibbs are out looking for him, Gibbs has this flashback of when he was telling him the news that his mom had died. Phineas explains to Gibbs that when his mom had taken him in, she said it was because his aunt and uncle that had raised him didn't want him anymore, and he's also very afraid to live with his dad. Meanwhile, Gibbs is like, I'm just not gonna tell you that I'm the one who killed your mother. We'll save that. Back in the present, while they're driving around, they come across one of Phineas's friends, and the friend says that he lent Phineas his bike in the middle of the night. Part of the team goes back to the club from last episode to interrogate Victor. He doesn't really give them any new information, but they do break it to him that Sarah is dead. All this is happening while they're like choking him, by the way. It's like a lot. Meanwhile, back in the squad room, Bishop gets a report of a kid on a bike matching Phineas's description. Gibbs and Torres chase the bike down, and the guy on the bike is like riding away really quickly, and Ziva just comes out of nowhere and like throat punches him to stop him. Remind me how she knew that wasn't Phineas? Or was she just like taking a gamble? I don't know. And Ziva's like, mind if I join? And Gibbs is like, actually kind of. The guy says that he ran into Phineas at a bus station and gave him money for the bike. Gibbs and Ziva get into the car to head to the bus station, and on the way over, Ziva says that when she called McGee to say goodbye, he was explaining the situation to her, and now she knows what Phineas means to him, and Paris can wait, as we've learned. Whenever Ziva refers to Phineas, she like won't call him Phineas for some reason. She always just calls him like the boy or the child, like he's Baby Yoda or something. Back in the squad room, the rest of the team finds out that Sahar gave birth in prison and then the child was put in an orphanage. Casey then comes up and shows them this half of a heart locket that Sahar was wearing, and they wonder if maybe Phineas has the other half. Everything just gets very Little Orphan Annie for a minute, except the locket has like a GPS tracker in it. So I guess Daddy Warbucks would have had like a much easier job. Gibbs and Torres and Ziva talk to the ticket people at the bus station. They say they remember Phineas and that he was talking about wanting to go to Philly to meet up with his aunt. Throughout this, we cut to Ziva's phone and we see that she's been texting Tony. She's texted him that everything's all clear, that they're safe, but he hasn't responded yet. The three of them hop in the car and head to the bus's next stop. Ziva starts apologizing for bringing this situation upon him, and then Gibbs is like, I'm sorry I ever let this kid in my life to begin with. And Ziva's like, this is supposed to be a pity party of one, thank you very much. It does turn into like a nice short conversation about how they've both suffered a lot, and that doesn't mean they should shut people out of their life. It's very sweet. By the time they get to the next bus station, a worker tells them they just saw Phineas leave with someone they assume was his father. Back in the squad room, Sloane follows Gibbs into the elevator. She gets him to breathe for a second, which is like a feat. We cut to another flashback, and it's of Phineas asking if he can stay with Gibbs, and Gibbs is like, probably not. And Phineas is obviously like a little bit offended by that. Down in autopsy, I mean, I love this scene. I'm just like, whoa. Down in autopsy, Jimmy and Ziva are talking. Jimmy's like, well, we're just happy to have you back among the living. And Ziva's like, I don't know if the living feel the same way about me. And she wonders, you know, will Tolly even remember her? Which is fair. Jimmy says that Tony would never let Tolly forget her. And then Ziva talks about how Jimmy is still everyone's favorite confidant, and they hug, and it's lovely. My words don't do it justice, just watch it yourselves. In MTAC, Gibbs and Sloane and Vance talk to this embassy worker from Damascus. Sahar was apparently having some sort of fling with like an organization leader, and she thought by having his kid it would make them closer, but didn't work. So she had Phineas and then just killed the father. Phineas then ended up in the American foster care system, but he has an uncle named Hassan who wants him back and has a bounty out on Sahar's head. If it feels like I'm throwing a lot of information at you at once, just imagine what this episode is like. They're discussing the uncle down in the squad room, and Ziva just like materializes because she recognizes the name and that he's like a real bad dude. They also get access to the tape from the bus station and see that the man who picked Phineas up was Victor. It turns out that Victor did know about Phineas, and he was the one who gave the locket to Sahar. He also plans on returning Phineas to the uncle so that he can reap the rewards. In the car, Ziva starts talking to Gibbs about how she killed Ari to save Gibbs, and then Gibbs killed Sarah to save Ziva, and now they've come full circle. Now that that whole chapter of her life is closed, she's free. But she's been procrastinating to return to her family because she doesn't know if she'll ever be able to get back to like a sense of normal. And she wonders if she can ever be a good mother or life partner or... But as she's explaining how she's yet to hear back from Tony, she hears back from Tony. That's convenient. She opens the video and it's Tali saying that she loves her and that they miss her. And then Gibbs is just like watching her and he's like smiling like a proud father and he's like, you know what? I think you're ready to go back, clearly. They also figure out that Victor purchased 2 tickets for a flight to Cairo. I feel like we've been talking about Cairo a lot this arc for very different reasons. We cut to Victor holding Phineas at the airport, and Victor's like holding him really aggressively and is like threatening to kill him, and everyone around them is just like, this is fine. As Phineas walks through the metal detector, it's set off. They uncover that Phineas has a knife on him, and Phineas is like, Dad, you told me to hold this for you. Damn, cutthroat. The team runs up just in time and they grab Phineas, and Phineas talks to Gibbs and he's like, just like you taught me, rule number 9, always carry a knife, which is a really endearing message to teach a 9-year-old. Back at NCIS, Gibbs and Phineas are just kind of like chilling and eating. Phineas is talking about how he feels really sad that his mom had told him that his aunt and uncle didn't want him anymore. Sloane then walks in and reunites him with his foster parents, who are his aunt and uncle. It's a really sweet moment. It's really nice to see them reunited. I hope they're not evil. I digress. Gibbs goes to Sloane and is like, how did you do this? And she's like, miracles happen. As she says that, she like stares at his lips, which is like, okay. Back in the squad room, we also see that Tony sent McGee a video and it's of Tali calling him Uncle Tim and asking if he can bring her cousins to Paris so they can play in his... Ooh. Ziva talks to Sloane and thanks her for taking care of Gibbs' heart. Ziva just seems very aware that everyone in this room could just make out at any moment. And it's fine by her. She thanks Vance for arranging her flight to Paris. Casey and Ziva start speaking French to each other. It's a moment. Ziva tells Torres that if her child ever went missing, she'd want him on the case. She also reminds him to not be a wuss and tell her how he feels. Ziva tells Bishop that Odette's ready when she is, because that's also a thing that's happening. Ziva then goes to McGee and is like, I will miss you most of all, Scarecrow, which is also how Tony said goodbye to EJ. That's fine. Her and Palmer start leaving for the airport. Not because Palmer is flying to Paris with them as much as I would love that. Gibbs stops her before she leaves and reminds her that she's ready for this, and this time she agrees. Gibbs says that they'll always be there for her and that she can like always come back, don't make them come looking, which please. And then she gets in the elevator and she winks and she smiles and the door is shut. And that is In the Wind. I just simply don't know where to begin. As I'm sure you can imagine, like I have a lot of thoughts and they're gonna be quite all over the place, I imagine. In fact, I have so many thoughts that I'm sitting down to refilm this part of the video. I've spent the last week trying to edit my thoughts on this video from when I originally filmed into like coherent ideas, and it's just not getting there. The thoughts might still be incoherent, but hopefully they'll at least be a little bit easier to edit. So let's start with Phineas's story, because it was much more involved than I was expecting, I guess. There was the stuff about the locket and his dangerous uncle and his foster parents and more to Sahar's backstory. It was definitely very involved, and I think at some points that worked to its advantage, and I think at some points it was a little less advantageous, I guess. I loved that it was so connected to the characters and it was able to incorporate like the whole team and Gibbs and Ziva. I really liked like the emotional high stakes of it, and I like Phineas in general, to be honest. Unfortunately, I felt like I wasn't always able to give it my full attention because I was also focused on this being Ziva's last episode, for now at least. Like there was this one moment where there was like 2 or 3 minutes left in the episode and I could not stop staring at my phone because I'm like, oh my god, how are we still gonna fit the 14 things I want to see in these final 120 seconds? I feel like I could not maybe appreciate it the way I could if it were in a different episode, because as much as I love Phineas, I love Ziva a little bit more. I feel like it would be much easier to revisit Phineas's stuff than it would be to revisit Ziva's stuff. I enjoy that they had this plot line that all the characters could be involved in, unlike Past, Present, Future, where it felt super disjointed from everything else that was happening, because to this day I still really can't tell you what the other things happening in Past, Present, Future were, even though at times it was like a little bit frustrating to be focusing so heavily on this really involved subplot that at its core doesn't really have to do with Ziva. I would much rather have something like that where Ziva and the team can be involved and it's weighty and emotional and connected to the story, compared to past, present, future, where it's just like existing for the sake of existing, kind of. For a lot of this arc, I feel like I liked the ideas, but not always the execution. I like the idea of bringing things full circle. Like I like the idea of Gibbs killing someone important to him in order to save Ziva, just the way that Ziva killed someone important to her to save Gibbs. I don't necessarily love that in the execution of that person turned out to be Sarah. I feel like that relationship, even between Gibbs and Phineas, or especially Gibbs and Sarah, was not that developed to make that comparison yet. Another thing is I like the idea of Ziva questioning whether or not her family will accept her back into their lives after all this time. I think that's such like a fascinating, really emotionally heart-wrenching thing to talk about. I don't necessarily love that the core of that discussion was about like Tony not answering texts and then they resolve it with like a video message. I love the video, don't get me wrong, but who's gonna break it to Tony that like FaceTime exists? I don't know if you guys echo this feeling at all, but to me, it felt like there were a lot of things from the first half of the arc that were just kind of dropped in the second half. Like there was that whole thing with the phone. I stand by the fact that I really think that phone was originally supposed to be brought back up. I feel like maybe Ari was supposed to be more involved in the backstory, which I know I mention it every day of my life. To me, that just doesn't read as like a sob story thing that Mr. Rogers was talking about. We also dropped Mr. Rogers. Goodbye. I would have loved like some kind of closing comment on Adam, because again, the man died. The man died for her. A lot is happening in the first 2 episodes. We're learning a lot, but it's like a walk in the park compared to the rest. Like that's syllabus day, and then the next 2 episodes were the rest of the semester. And we still have not touched on so much of the things that were brought up in this half of the arc. Phineas never found out what actually happened to his mom. The depths of what his mother was involved in, the story behind his uncle and his father. I'm really crossing my fingers that that gets re-brought up at some point. Yeah, I think it's gonna be real sad and unfortunate. There's a lot of potential there and I would hate to see it go to waste. Especially with his uncle, because I feel like they established like a whole potential plot line there with like his uncle wanting him back. And I imagine his uncle still does want him back. One thing I really do appreciate about this whole arc, like this whole 4-episode arc, is that I think it's pretty ambitious. I really do appreciate how ambitious a lot of those themes and ideas they wanted to explore were. Out of the Darkness is probably my favorite episode out of this whole arc. It introduced so many possibilities that I think the arc kind of got lost in all of them. Past, present, future. This video, by the way, was not meant to like rip on past, present, future. That's just like an unfortunate byproduct. What I think past, present, future does is the idea that Ziva cannot escape her fate or her destiny, and just gives her this really tragic ending that we were, you know, presumably never gonna see her get past. Even Family First has her being killed by events that were like controlled by her past, that she cannot escape her fate. And I just really dislike that sentiment. And for all of this arc's faults, because hi, believe me, it has some faults, I think it tries to rectify a lot of those ideas. I think it tries to put her back in control of who she is as a character. I think that Sloane kind of does better in one line what Past, Present, Future was trying to do in like the course of 2 episodes. And it's that line where she's talking about, you know, 14 years ago Ziva killed her brother, look how we're still feeling the effects of it. It talks about the consequences of Ziva's actions, but it doesn't make them define her. I don't know, am I going crazy? Am I just like diving down a rabbit hole for no reason? I feel like that's what's happening maybe. I cannot express to you how much I love that this arc ends with her happy, that she is smiling, that she is very explicitly like welcomed back by the other characters, that she has made peace with Gibbs and McGee. My god, do I love her friendship with Jimmy Palmer. It is top notch. We get to see her presumably go to live her life as a partner and mother, and I think that's so exciting and wonderful, and she's smiling. Speaking of the ending, the marketing for this episode was like a little bit it kept hyping up a reunion that I don't think we ever necessarily got. Like, yes, we saw Ziva see the video, which was lovely, and I really enjoyed that, but I wouldn't call that like a reunion. She never reunited with her family face to face, and I think that was a little bit disappointing to a lot of people. It was a little bit disappointing to me. And I think it's fair to be disappointed by that. The driving force behind pretty much this whole arc is that Ziva wants to get back to her family. And at the end, we never see her get reunited with her family. We know it's gonna happen, but we don't get to like see it happening or know that it happened. It's like if at the end of Homeward Bound, the animals walk up that hill and they see the house and they're like, we should go there at some point. It's never gonna be fully satisfying until you like see it with your own two eyeballs. Another thing that I think is like really fascinating about this is that so much of Tony and Ziva's like lore as of the past few seasons has been stuff that we've just heard about and not really seen. I feel like they're always like, hey, remember when that thing happened? And I'm like, well, no, I don't remember because I was not there. Apparently, at some point, Ziva was telling all these people that she had very, you know, important feelings for Tony. And we never saw, we just kind of heard about. We heard about Tony and Ziva's first reunion after the fire. I feel like there was a particularly important event in Past, Present, Future that we missed as well. But that's fine. I do wish we had heard more about their reunion and how like Tony and Ziva like reacted to the whole like, I thought you were dead, here's our secret child thing, you know? I just really adore how normalized it was to the whole team that Tony, Ziva, and Tali are a family. Like there was no like weirdness at all. Jimmy was comparing his relationship to Brina with Ziva's relationship to Tony, and I just like, I love that. I do adore that she calls him Uncle Tim and that his kids are her cousins. Speaking of family first, we really just kind of swept her under the rug, didn't we? Why are you running? I get that it would be rather difficult to factor all of that in when they're already doing literally 1,000,001 things. I'm really crossing my fingers that we jump back to this storyline at some point. Not only do I think there's like a whole lot more we need to discuss and build upon as far as like Phineas goes and Sahar's backstory and Phineas's relationship with his uncle and his father and subsequently his relationship with Gibbs after he finds out about this whole mess. I do think it would be a perfect opportunity for them to maybe bring Ziva back, if they would ever do that. Even if they can't bring Ziva back, I'd love them to touch on this arc again, but I do think that would be a nice opportunity. She established that she has knowledge of the uncle, so like who better to bring back and help them with this case than Ziva? Just throwing that out there. I've said many like non-spectacular things about this arc, but I would just like to point out a few things that I really do appreciate. I love that we talked about her becoming a mother and a partner, talking about Ziva's mental health. I think that was so important. I like that we explored how she felt betrayed by Gibbs. I don't love every moment in between where she was like, I should have let my brother murder you in cold blood. Like that maybe was not like the move. I liked that core idea behind it, and I liked where we eventually got. I love her relationship with Jimmy and McGee. I like that we, you know, very briefly touched on Vance's relationship. Hey Vance, glad to see you for 2 minutes. I thought a lot of the stuff that they introduced with the new characters was interesting, especially her relationship with Bishop, because that's like a very like looming presence that's been happening for the past 6 years. We finally got to see Bishop and Ziva interact, and that's something I really never thought we would get, and I love that. Oh yeah, the whole Odette thing. Oh god, I just loved having Ziva back. Again, that's a character I really, really love, and to see her back, especially after I never thought we would, is just really wonderful to me. That horrible like crying shot at the end of Past, Present, Future is no longer the last shot we have of her, and I'm just super grateful for that. I can sleep again for the first time since October 1st, 2013. So that's nice. So what's ahead? We have not referenced Ziva really at all since it has been several weeks. I'm sorry that it's been several weeks. I don't even know if anyone's going to be watching this at this point. If you are, hi, thank you so much. This past week, as of when I'm filming this, the Torres hit and run ICU situation just aired, and I have a lot of feelings about that. I can't wait to talk about that. There was supposed to be a Robert Wagner episode, I believe, but I am pretty sure it's not happening because of, I think, personal things that are happening with him. I don't really know the extent of it, but I'm pretty sure that I've heard the episode is no longer happening, which is a little bit of a bummer, but I'm interested to see if we'll still hear back about what's going on with Tony and Ziva, because that was an update I was really looking forward to. They could just do me a solid and like throw like an update in by the 400th episode. That would be pretty sick. Thank you guys so much for following along on this Ziva journey with me. Thank you guys for just like caring what I have to say. It really means a lot to me. It oh, that's that's how I communicate now. I'm also curious to know if there are people who like have never caught up on the Ziva episodes who are watching now. I'm curious to know what people who are familiar with her character thought, but I'm also curious to know what people who aren't so familiar with her character thought about this arc. I think that's really interesting. Please let me know your guys' thoughts, not just on this episode, but on the arc as a whole, now that it's come to its conclusion. I believe that's all for now, and I will see you guys for the next recap and review.